We can nitpick all we want, but the Bruins, they're 1-0. Their next opponent, the Alabama State Hornets out of the SWAC, HBCU, an FCS opponent for the first time in UCLA's history. Let's introduce you to the Hornets of Alabama State as we get started on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer as your host for Locked On UCLA. That's where you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow the show at Locked On Bruins. Locked On UCLA, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for making it your first listen each and every day. As you can get on YouTube, you can get it on Odyssey, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you do. Just also know that this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. You can post your job for free right there if you're looking at YouTube. And sponsored by LinkedIn as we bring you this episode introducing the Alabama State Hornets. As Bruin fans, get those hands in the air for a Bruin 8 clap, everybody. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA, fight, 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 as we're locked and loaded on this special edition of Locked On UCLA. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer with you guys, as for the first time in the program history of UCLA football, they are taking on a 1AA team, a FCS team, whatever you know it as. It's the first time in UCLA history, all because Michigan and that series dropped out. I believe Rutgers was also in that future schedule from a long time ago. Whatever it was, everything fell through. The Bruins then had to fill their schedule. Thus, the Bowling Green, South Alabama, and in the end, the Alabama States all materialized for this 2022 football schedule, all at home, giving the Bruins 8 games at home for the first time in a long while. I know I mentioned the year. It's been a long time since the Bruins have had 8 games at home, wherever that was, as the Bruins just kicked off. It's been 40 years since they've been at the Rose Bowl. First time they've ever welcomed in an FCS opponent after they finally welcomed in a MAC opponent for the first time ever. So back-to-back firsts for the Bruins, taking on an Alabama State team that is 2-0 out of the SWAC, coached by Eddie Robinson Jr., their new coach, and they've gotten the job done in each of their first couple of games. They started week 0 in the SWAC MEAC Challenge, took down Howard College, another HBCU, and then took down a D2 college from Alabama, Miles College. Both games rather close, and for the most part, the Hornets got away with the win in both games. Some weather delays, so they won't be fazed by any sort of maybe potential rain when it comes this weekend into the Rose Bowl. There's some slight chance of rain, high humidity, upper 80s, some weird, funky weather we're getting in SoCal in the Rose Bowl. The Bruins, they're not looking to be fazed by it. They're looking to go to 2-0 and drop the Hornets to 2-1. So with the new coach, they've gotten their first couple of wins under him. They're 2-0. This is an Alabama State team, as they haven't had a winning season in 6 years, including that FCS special spring season in early 2021, where they went 3-3. For the Hornets, they're coming off a 5-6 year, 3-5 in the SWAC. And for these HBCUs, the SWAC, the MEAC, they have the challenge, but the big thing is they compete for the Celebration Bowl. You win your conference, and it used to be just winning the SWAC conference. And yes, there is the FCS playoffs, which you see, and you see North Dakota State almost always win it sometimes. But in the FCS, the HBCUs, sometimes they're a little overmatched even by the other FCS teams. Thus, they've created a super conference championships, what's known as the Celebration Bowl, the Black College National Championship. That is what Alabama State is looking to go forward. They play in the same conference, same division as Deion Sanders and the mighty fighting Jackson State Tigers, I believe, as they take on Jackson State sometime this year. They did upset Deion Sanders in his first year, just a year and a half ago. But for Alabama State, the Fighting Hornets, they're mighty marching bands. They're excited to come to the Rose Bowl, and it's for the first time UCLA is ever hosting an HBCU. 2-0. They haven't had a winning season since the 2015 campaign when they went 6-5. That was the end of a 6 straight-year run where they had 6 straight winning seasons, then thus followed by 6 straight non-winning seasons. They've won their conference 6 times. It's been some time since that's happened. They last played in the conference title game in 2010, losing to Texas Southern 11-6. That's all the history going back and forth, just kind of introducing you to what Alabama State is, the program. And in the SWAC, in the preseason, they were predicted to finish 4th in the SWAC East in their division. They have 2 separate divisions, kind of highlighted between Florida A&M and Jackson State, but they were picked to finish 4th in their own division, just like Bowling Green, a little low about the 4th, 5th place slot in their division. Did get a first place vote, interestingly enough, but so far what they had was a couple of players who were able to garner some preseason first team all SWAC team nominations. You have their offensive lineman, Robert Alska, and then Urshad Davis on defense. I can't read my own handwriting. What a travesty. What a travesty. I write all this down and you can't even read it. What horribleness. But all jokes aside, this is a team that's 2-0, undefeated, on the verge of, with some good wins down the stretch during conference play, they could end that 6-season streak of non-winning years. Is this a game the Bruins are going to struggle with? This won't probably be like the Bowling Green game. We've nitpicked about the special teams, the offense, even the defense a little bit under Bill McGovern. But for the Bruins, this is not a game they're going to struggle with. So I figured we should kind of go up and down and kind of go back and see, all right, what did they play for? What are their big games? Who are some offensive guys to look out for the Hornets going forward for this UCLA defense as we kind of highlight Alabama State this week, the first ever HBCU and FCS opponent the Bruins will face off in their history, in their football program history. For the Bruins, again, Eddie Robinson, they had a couple of preseason All-SWAC first team nominations. They got a new coach, Eddie Robinson Jr., who is not related to Grambling State's coach, and his name was Eddie Robinson. But for the most part, this is a program, a conference, a team where no HBCU has beaten an FBS team since 1998 when Grambling State, by the coach of a similar name, Eddie Robinson, beat Oregon State way back when. But so far, it's been a long time coming for these HBCU schools to pull off an upset, and quite frankly, it won't be the Bruins, but it'll be nice to see a UCLA welcome in a team they've never seen before, bring him to the Rose Bowl. You could see what Jake Bobo's eyes look like as the transfer from Duke coming to the Rose Bowl, even Bowling Green coming to the Rose Bowl, regardless of how hot it was, the lack of fans. It's always a great sight to bring new people, new players, fans all across the nation into arguably one of the most iconic venues and football stadiums in not just Southern California as a whole, but across the nation, especially in the college football landscape, as we get a little bit more on Alabama State in just a few moments. But first, we'll give you some words from LinkedIn. As you gear up for fall, even though it's extremely toasty, fall will be just around the corner. You need to hire the right people on your team, and that can help get your small business firing on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. You can just simply create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network, over 810 million people. You can use simple tools, screening questions that makes it easy to focus on the candidates with the right skills and experience that you can quickly prioritize and find who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As we keep on rolling here for Locked On UCLA, we continue to stretch learning in bits and pieces about Alabama State, as the Bruins are expected to win big. We have to be real with you guys here. It's supposed to be a big margin, 50, 60. You see teams from the SEC, from other conferences, especially the SEC. They go play all these teams in the South. not always the HBCUs, but just the FCS opponents, and they tend to beat them up, and that's why they only play 8 conference games. We can debate this back and forth. That's not really the point of this episode, but they play them. These are buy games, money games. These programs live off these buy games to make the money, to keep their programs or other athletics continuing to play and be able to fund their athletics, just like how UCLA was able to get the Under Armour deal settled, the agreement, all the disputes there. They got the new deal with the Jordan brand and Nike, and then now they're going to the Big Ten with that massive media deal. This is how it all cycles through. It funnels from the top all the way back down to what could be known as the mid-majors, the small schools, or the FCS programs in Division I college football as they welcome in Alabama State to the Rose Bowl on Saturday at 2 p.m. Funny, weird weather, 2 p.m., which is normally the worst time to have a football game at the Rose Bowl when it's extremely hot and the sun is still out for the majority of the game. Except we saw last Saturday at Bowling Green how bad it can get, how hot and torturous it can be. They tortured Bowling Green. Bruins expected to do the same against Alabama State, who did beat Howard in game 1, 23-13 in week 0, a game that was hampered by 2 lengthy delays on their game time. It said it took about 4 hours in 40 minutes in duration. I also saw something about 5 hours, whatever it was the SWAC and MEAC Challenge, longest game duration in history. They played some long games and then beating D2 Miles College 21-13. And you would think, why would it be a little close if they played a D2 team? Well, Alabama State was leading by 21 points with 2 minutes left in the first quarter, and the Miles College kind of eat their way back in late with a late score to get that to a 1-possession game. But I've looked going through the schedule over the years for Alabama State. They find themselves, these FCS teams, even especially in the HBCUs, they sometimes can fall to a D2 program. Alabama State, they have their Turkey Tussles, they have their Turkey Day Classics, Magic City Classic against their bitter rival Alabama A&M. So this is a team that prides itself on playing some good football. They got a new coach looking to rejuvenate the HBCUs with the big splashy hire of Deion Sanders going to Jackson State. His son is the quarterback, lighting it up on national television. Now the rest of the conference and rest of those HBCUs looking to thrive off of that. So for the Bruins, this is a team that they're facing that's never won the Celebration Bowl. It's only been in existence the last 7 or so years. It's been played 6 times, 6 straight non-winning seasons. And here's some guys to look out for offensively. You got their quarterbacks. They've used a couple: Miles Crawley, Demetrius Davis, and those are their 2 quarterbacks. He's used them both. Demetrius Davis he played that first game mostly, had a couple of turnovers, a pick, a fumble, and then Miles Crawley. Those 2 have combined for about 233 yards in the air per average. You got 3 touchdowns in the air, 2 interceptions, a fumble that I noticed, and then the running game has churned out 114 yards per game, averaged between their first 2 wins. Between Ja'Cory Merritt, you have Juwan Harville and Dun Sonato, in addition to the exploits of Davis running the football himself, a dual threat guy for Alabama State. They've gotten 3 touchdowns on the ground. So between their 6 touchdowns, 3 in the air, 3 on the ground, they've had a couple of turnovers. And yes, they have had a punt blocked in their first game against Howard. So we'll see how special teams reigns in. Some other guys to look out for: Isaiah Scott, Levante Chanel, Jace Madog, and Darius Edmonds. My goodness, my handwriting that's absolutely the worst. So they have some guys who are lethal outside, but a lot of their talent comes from the secondary, highlighted by Rashad Davis, and their other offensive and only offensive first-teamer was their offensive lineman. So it looks like they'll lean on their secondary a little bit, which we'll see how the Bruins receivers can take advantage of that. We'll get to that in later episodes. But for the Bruins, facing a team that's used a couple of quarterbacks, distributed almost carries between 4 players, 3 running backs with 9 or more carries, no more than 15, and 1 quarterback carrying the ball 10 times already. That's Demetrius Davis, who's already had 10 carries, dual threat, not exactly the athlete that DTR is, but he is a dual threat guy. And then 4 receivers that they should look out for on skill positions. A lot of these numbers you've seen between these few games early on for Alabama State, they've kind of filtered in and distributed. They played a D2 team, got out early with the big lead, and then they were a little slow late. Dealt with the delays in game 1, week 0. against a non-conference opponent. They got the win, able to get some the SWAC MEAC Challenge MVPs, get that win, but they still had to win going away. Got that punt blocked, and so far they've made all their field goals. So they've made more field goals than UCLA. That's just kind of the miniature highlight for this Alabama State team coming in to this first ever meeting, first ever HBCU FCS matchup against UCLA. It's going to be a fun one in the Rose Bowl, whether it's not as exciting as people might be jazzed up to be, whether the attendance won't be as impressive as the Bruins would hope it is, as Chip Kelly, I remember, was asked earlier in practice a couple days ago after the game, attendance figures. Bruins are here to get wins, get better, and learn from their mistakes from week one, fine-tune things into week two, and then look forward to South Alabama in week three. And we've seen some crazy, almost FBS upsets. This will not be one this week. It should not be close. It will not be close. And the end of the story will be how big and how wide of a margin and how long do the starters play for the Bruins. As UCLA's got to take advantage. They'll say their first kind of dual threat quarterback, Matt McDonald, was not that guy from Bowling Green. And one might argue maybe Alabama State could put up a better offensive fight than Bowling Green did. And that's saying a lot. We got to pause ourselves there. Yet the Bruins will see a guy who can go dual threat, a running game that a little more history, but the difference is in the trenches, the strength between, say, Alabama State's offensive line to the Bruins' offensive line. Those are two completely different things. So a running attack that's got a little more prowess yardage-wise than, say, Bowling Green, it will be a difference between just the sheer strength and athletes UCLA can have going forward against Alabama State. It'll be an interesting one as we'll continue to preview more against the Hornets. But for UCLA, they've got to take this as an opportunity to rein in, make sure you stay healthy another week in the early parts of the college football season. We've seen Pac-12 already get hit and dinged with two massive losses in week one, whether it be Oregon getting blown out, as some may have expected, to Georgia, or Utah taking that crushing last-second blow against Florida on the road in Gainesville at the last second, throwing the pick. The Bruins, well, they can make their mistakes. And as Chip Kelly, I believe, said in an interview, saying, hey, we can make our mistakes, but you can redo them in practice, but you can't redo them in the game. You make your mistakes, you throw your picks, you make your fumbles. And for UCLA, these are the times to make their mistakes, but learn from them. It did look very sloppy, very ugly at points in game one, but they had some strong moments, which is what we only want to see in game two, strong moments, and even better in week three, moving on to then Pac-12 play when they go to Boulder, Colorado, and face Carl Durrell, who may certainly be on the hot seat for the Buffaloes, but more on that when we get to it. As the Bruins, this is just an opportunity, just a simple opportunity. Get better each week, every time you lace it up, strap it up, play on the gridiron, and you can easily be 2-0. That's the simple fact of it. This is an Alabama State team who their season is hinged on beating Deion Sanders and winning these Turkey Day Classics, which they played some crazy Thanksgiving Day games against some D2 opponents, the Tuskegees. You have just other opponents they've played. They have their big Magic City Classics. They have a fun band, which we hope we get to perform. Week one, there was the usual, the youth football players coming out week one, having to play at halftime in the brutal heat at the Rose Bowl. Every fan included, like myself, you go the shade in the tunnel. Nobody watched it. But for all the fans in the Rose Bowl Saturday, we hope this band for Alabama State performs, nationally recognized. We'll hopefully detail it a little more later. But they've got a great band, fan base. In the SWAC, they've actually had some of the best attendance for FCS conferences. Of the 44 years FCS football has been around, technically, whether it be 1AA or FCS football, whatever you want to call it, football championship subdivision, a lot of words put into an acronym. SWAC usually gets good attendance, and for Alabama State, they play football, they're ready to go, as the Bruins say, all right, we'll welcome in your new coach, your new rejuvenated energy, and bring it into the Rose Bowl and say, all right, let's rock and roll and try to take you out for a second win, as the Bruins should, maybe put up 50, 60, potentially 70 points. But for the most part, let's see how this defense goes against a dual tech QB, averaged about 233 yards per game in the air between two guys. A rushing attack that doesn't seem as inept as you would say at Bowling Green is. The difference is the athletes, the strength, the speed compared to what Bowling Green has is even, one would say, more superior than, say, an Alabama State would have. So simply, Bruins, just take care of business, and we'll continue to talk more about Alabama State as the week rolls on. Bruin fans, just a reminder, thanks for making Locked On UCLA your first listen each and every day. Now go make your second listen, the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season, the local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus the betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Meanwhile, Bruin fans, UCLA fans, get those hands in the air for that final 8 clap, everybody. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.